of the Libertarian Movie Club. Well, this time it's the TV Show Club. We're talking about the Clone Wars. I'm sitting down with Mike Litwin. Sorry.
Yeah, you got it there.
There we go. We're going to talk about the Clone Wars because it's probably the best thing the best thing Star Wars has besides Mandalorian is the Clone Wars. So, Mike,
Yeah,
what
I would
was your
say
opinion of
so.
the Clone? You agree? Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
It's kind of incredible when you think about it. How good that show is.
Yeah, I mean, you compare it to Rebels, it came out afterwards, like it being on Cartoon Network for so long was a huge benefit because Cartoon Network was like, yeah, go ahead and stab that dude right in the back. That's fine. You have lightsabers going right to people's chests and no one's like caring. But on Disney Channel, they're like, no, you can't have anyone die.
Yeah,
So it's
like
like,
I haven't seen I've seen clips of Rebels and stuff. I haven't seen most of it, but yeah, like Rebels is very much more for like kids, and I
there's
know
a
that the Clone Wars is as well, but there's still like some pretty brutally violent stuff in
I
the
mean, there's
show.
that scene where Obi-Wan has a lightsaber on that terrorist, and Satine has a blaster on him. He's like, "Who's gonna be the first to kill me and be labeled a cold-blooded murderer?" And Anakin just stabs him right in the back, and it's like
Yeah,
they
that's
just brutally murdered that dude, and it's a joke, and it's like, what?
it's it gets dealt with so like nonchalantly. It's not like, oh my God, what have you done? It's like, come on, man, like what are you
that's
doing?
a that's a weird scene because like the tension is high, the music is very heavy, it's very intense. And then it happens. Anakin's like all not giving a crap and Zoki, but Obi-Wan is so like disappointed. Like it's a weird scene because like
Yeah, and if you
this
listen
is good.
carefully, there's a musical sting in there. If you listen real close, there's like a hint of the his
Imperial,
like
Imperial.
Vader theme
Yeah,
in
you
there.
can catch like the very end, like that little like you hear it, and you're like, this is why the show was so good. They made this really intense scene where it's like the debate. They made the whole episode debating pacifism versus war. I mean, it was a really good episode covering a lot of different scenes, and it ends with a half joke, half serious moment. So when Anakin to the dark side, Obi-Wan being worried about, like it's like in 30 minutes, you showed Anakin's like conversion better than the entire prequel
Well,
series.
yeah, that's like that was one of the big complaints people had about three was just you end two and Anakin's a little conflicted, sure, but he's still a Jedi. But then like
Yeah.
three comes in, like the transition is like he's a Jedi, and then he has two conversations with Palpatine, and now he's a Sith. Like
Yep.
it kind of hits people so fast. But when you watch the show, like they sprinkle those moments in there where like just like stabbing that terrorist through the chest.
Yep. And he
There's a
goes
couple other
from
ones,
he goes
yeah, where
from
he
what have I
like
done to killing children within like a 5 minutes period. It's
it's kind
like,
of shocking if you think about it.
yeah, like how like this is why like I can't remember who I told some of the podcasts I said the prequels weren't great and then the Clone Wars made them better. Like you watch the Clone Wars, like, oh, the prequels are actually really good now. Like you watch Attack of the Clones, then he finished the mystery off in the Clone Wars, then he watched episode 3 after watching the Clone Wars. Like, yeah, this fixed these made these movies really good.
Yeah, I think I can't remember which one of your podcasts you'd mentioned that the prequel trilogy should have just been the Clone Wars. Like you start
Mhm.
with the beginning, you have an episode somewhere in the middle, and then you have episode three be kind of what
Mhm.
it is. And I think that would have been much better. Like you don't need the pod racing, you don't need,
Yeah.
his mom is a slave. Like that comes up in the show even. They deal
Mhm.
with slavery in the show. So
Yeah,
like there was ways to approach that.
a
Yeah.
kid show handled slavery, and they handled it well. Like this was like I said before, Clone Wars was the last good like TV show that kind of like could handle a seems like every kid show now is stupid as hell. It's really dumb. And this is the last one that was like, hey, we're gonna actually cover topics and scenes because the parents are gonna watch this with the kids and they'll be entertained as well. And they
Yeah, like
do it.
there's
It's
some
incredible.
like there's some goofy episodes in there with like the Jar Jar episodes and the droid
Mhm.
episodes are kind of like
Yeah.
goofy nonsense, and then you have like the bounty hunter episodes are kind of in the
Hmm.
middle, and then like any episode with like Plo Koon is gonna deal with like some heavy stuff,
Hmm.
and
They go to that the fourth planet with the father, the daughter, and the brother, and the sister and the brother, and it's like that is some foretelling the dark side. Anakin goes bad for a bit. Anything, any episode covering those five clones, heavy fives, was heavy. I mean, they just
heavy fives, Echo, yeah,
echo. Oh, what was the other one? I can't remember them all.
um,
Um,
cut up, I think.
cut up. Watching them like seeing the training arc and their like introduction. and then watching them slowly kind of get killed off. It's hard. You like these are the clones you care about, and it's like you're just like nothing. They're just gone, and it's like that is. Oh,
Yeah,
so is a good
it's
job.
kind of interesting in that way that they use clones, and it covers a couple of things, like a couple interesting themes where, they're kind of human but also kind of not in a way.
Mhm.
And I know that, like, yeah, they're human in that, like, they're people, but it's about as close as you can be to being human without the audience really caring like what happens to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Because the
once you learn their
bread,
names, you care about them a little more. But
yeah.
like, the random clone in a helmet is basically might as well be a droid
Hmm.
to the viewer. Like, it doesn't matter.
The clones are so interesting because they really make you question the Jedi's morals. It's like you're using kind of slave labor here. They're bred, and then the engineer not to disobey order, not to disobey. The engineer to follow orders, and the Jedi never question that. There's no moral question of like, hey, should we use people who aren't allowed to have free will and not allowed to make their own decisions, and they're engineered to always do what we say? Like they never really question that. They just kind of go with it. It's like that bugs me a little bit. You're
Yeah,
using drones.
especially when in the show there's the slaver planet
Hmm.
where like they explicitly mention that like the Jedi are the ones who like crushed their slave empire. So it's yeah, it
Yeah,
kind of doesn't gel, but I think
yeah,
it's just kind of walked away of like, well, if we don't, then like more people will die, like some kind of
mm,
utilitarian argument. So
yeah.
they kind of just like wipe it under the rug,
The Jedi's mores are all over the place and not really questioned. Like there's one thing where it's in the prequels you watch and you're just like when I was rewatching for the podcast, I was like, these I'm not saying these are the good guys anymore. Some of the things, some of the actions they take, I'm like, I don't know if I'd say these are. I mean, they're labeled the good guys, but how much of that is institutionalized propaganda from the states? It's like it really is. It's like are these the good guys? I don't know anymore.
Well,
The only
it's
good
funny
Jedi
you
is
should
Ahsoka.
yeah, it's funny you should mention the propaganda aspect because when they open up the episode, there's like the musical sting and it's like the quick montage of like battle sequences and it'll be like ambush on Tatooine, the Jedi are like engaged with the separatists. And if you know a little bit of history, in World War II, there were newsreels, and it would be they would come out every so often. It would be kind of like that. It would be like a 10 to 30 minute movie, and it would open up with a musical sting like that. There's one for D-Day where you can just go like foothold in Europe. It says on the thing. There's like a musical sting, and it shows like wreckages of tanks on the beach and things like that. So it kind of does have that propaganda aspect.
Legend Legend of Korra, the Avatar series, is something very similar. I don't know if you ever watched it or not, but they had a 1940s style, 1920s like news style radio style guy come on, and he'd break down the previous episode, and it felt like a I don't know, it felt like a news piece, and it always had a very heavy slant towards the good guys, even if you kind of understood where the bad guys are coming from. There's a there's a few kid shows out there that they really cover. It seems that you were like they cover deep philosophical things, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a kid show for 8-year-olds, and they're talking about is pacifism and war and the justification of going to war and succession, and it's like, wait, what is this again? This is made for kids, right?
Yeah, and yeah, so I've seen the original Avatar, but it's been a long time. I don't think I watched The Legend of Korra, but
I
um,
recommend it. They the season 3 villain is anarchist, like straight up an anarchist who goes
okay,
after who goes after the Earth Queen. Like he's a
okay,
straight up anarchist. It's incredible, and they cover it well, and you kind of get where he's coming from. The So even does that himself. Like he was like, that queen's a bitch. Is it okay if he kills her? Like they really do a fair job of anarchism, and that's so it's really good.
yeah, they do, and like they do a decent job in Clones of making a few of the villains sympathetic, and you really get an understanding of kind of where the villains are coming from, not just
Mm-hmm.
the Jedi. Like
Yeah.
you dig into Asajj Ventress's
Mm.
backstory. There's a few episodes that deal with Lux Bonteri
Mm.
that are quite good, where you get kind of like, I think it's the only time in all the movies where you get like you really get to see like what the separatists kind of look like.
Mm.
It's just the droids for everything else. And there's like only like one or two episodes in the show where they kind of
Yeah.
show that like, oh yeah, they have like a democracy and they're like regular people.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them just wanted to succeed and leave, and they got co-opted by I mean, it's not like Palpatine, manufactured all these problems. There was a legitimate sentiment that he co-opted to create the Civil War. It's like this. So there's legitimate complaints they have, but he kind of you feel bad for them because like they just wanted to not be part of the Galactic Republic anymore, and they got co-opted by a political extremist who was also co-opted by Emperor Palpatine. Count Dooku was co-opted, and so it's like these people aren't bad; they're co-opted. The same way I wouldn't say the Jedi are good because they always do what they're supposed to do in Palpatine's plan. And so like really, you feel bad for everyone because they're just doing exactly as Palpatine planned for them to do. They just get their ideas co-opted by this mastermind. It's such a good show, man. Oh, I gotta love it.
Yeah, I mean, it really hits on all the notes. And like you've covered before on your show, the like the hubris of the Jedi and all that. But well, I kind of want to cut over to Palpatine because he really does he really does a masterful job of manipulating people because he only comes across as like a politician, and like the Jedi just kind of see him as like a politician. They never see him as anything else. Everyone in politics sees him as like this brave leader. Even though he explicitly goes against everything Padme does, Padme never kind of gets wind of like, oh, like, isn't it weird that this guy like always seems to not care whenever
from
like
Naboo. They're from the same planet. He was a senator of a planet. He never
right.
He never doubts it. He never doubts it. It's weird.
Like I know we get the Jedi like not getting it because they're kind of like hubristic, but it's very strange that someone not attuned to politics like never catches on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's that whole group of them. There's like Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, Padme, and a few others, and they're always trying to like pass some bill and get some votes, and like usually at the last second there's some like crazy thing that will happen, and then Palpatine will kind of just dictate something from the podium. Like every now and then they'll win, but the wins are never lasting. Like they at one point they win a vote to stop the production of new clones in some bill, and then like 2 episodes later it's like, oh well, the separatists attacked, so now we need to pass that bill.
My last guest, Stephen Kent, he wrote a book on Star Wars. I brought up Pareto's Circulation of the Elites, and he applied to Star Wars that the people who created Rebellion, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, all these people, they were elites who just lost, and they got so mad about losing their political power, they started a rebellion. Like they just wanted their power back. They wanted the republic. They wanted to have democracy again because they were the ones voting. It's like even these good guys are just like the politicians who wanted their power back. It's like when I watched it, I try to keep myself like, okay, the good guys and bad guys are not going to be ones labeled light side, dark side. It's actually watched it as like it's a news show. Like who are the people? What's the motivations? Who are the actual good guys? It's really only Ahsoka and a few of the clones. Like I have a hard time thinking anyone in the show is really good. Like Obi-Wan, but even then, I'm just like my favorite character. I met James on Taylor once.
Yeah, I think Ahsoka for sure is up there. I would say it's hard for me to say Bo-Katan because it's really just the last couple episodes. I would say
Satine. I would say
Satine for sure.
Yeah.
I guess Obi-Wan, but again, the Obi-Wan is just kind of, he wants to do the right thing. Like you can always see in this show, he always wants to do the right thing, but he always like, if Anakin had that level of discipline, so none of this would have happened.
How good is Obi-Wan Kenobi in the show? I mean, Obi-Wan my favorite character in the prequels and the first Western trilogy, and the show just made him even better. Like he really becomes one of the best characters in the Star Wars universe. And James Arnold Taylor's voice acting. I mean, the voice actors in Clone Wars are so good. When I sing of the characters, I sing of the voice actors. I don't sing of Hayden Christensen. I sing of these voice actors.
Yeah, I know James Arnold Taylor. I can't remember the other
Me neither.
voice actors off the top of my head, but yeah, they do a great job. And like whenever I picture the characters, I picture them in their like their outfits from the Clone Wars. Like whenever I think of Obi-Wan, I think of like him with like the clone armor on his arms and stuff.
That was a weird thing I noticed. I was we watching this. Like Mace Windu says to keep us at a peace, not soldiers. and they're wearing straight up clone armor, the armor of the soldiers in the next battle. You know, it's like keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Clone Wars happens. He's a Zen War. They're wearing clone armor. You know, they really just get into it. Like they assume commands. It's sort of, I don't know how, it's something about that, like that's that switch going from we're not soldiers, pieces of people, keepers of the peace, to they took. I don't know if they wanted it or something, but there's something about that switch that's interesting. I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, there's two things I want to mention about that. So the first is yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know. Like, I haven't read a lot of like the back lore on how like the Republic basically let the Jedi become generals, because they're kind of separate entities. They're not really one and the same. Like they become more intertwined as the show goes on. But so first off, having the Jedi kind of like work together with the clones and become like friends with them, I think that actually kind of like works against them when like Order 66 is given, because there's like hesitation there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know like obviously Yoda doesn't care, but
Yeah,
Yoda
that
is
was a
psychopathic.
yeah. I was that's weird when you watch the episodes of that final season of Clone Wars was amazing. And I watched episode 3, and it's like, how is it when Ahsoka's on screen, I'm feeling bad for the clones, but the moment Darth Maul's on screen or Yoda's on screen and killing clones, I don't care. Like it's only one story on how Ahsoka I care about.
Yeah, so like just think about that empathy, right? So like when the character is doing it, you feel empathetic for them. So like imagine being them, right?
Yeah.
So like I think Order 66 really packs more of an emotional punch when you think about it that way. And the other thing is that when you insert the Jedi into a war situation, there's a couple episodes with Tarkin where Tarkin shows up, and Tarkin kind of like pokes this bubble where, you know, he's like, I don't think the Jedi are fit for command. Like your kind of ideals get in the way of like assuring victory. And Anakin's kind of like, you know, yeah, like you're right. And if Anakin had stayed on that path, it would have kind of been like, you know, we're like the Jedi really shouldn't be doing this, and everyone else in the Jedi Order is kind of like, well, you know, we kind of have to. And it's like, well, do you really? I'm like that's never seemed to be broached. It starts as like
Yeah.
we're keepers of the peace, and then it just kind of becomes of like this permanent peacekeeping mission, and it
Mm-hmm.
never they never really reflect on like, oh, like, you know, we are soldiers now. And they just kind of roll in, and it's like the frog in the boiling water, you know, it just kind of,
Yeah.
you got to get accustomed to it.
I can't remember who I said it to, but I said Anakin is more of a soldier than a Jedi. Like he really he didn't seem like he enjoys being on the battlefield more than he enjoys, like, the Jedi have two goals: keep the peace and study the Force. Anakin doesn't do either of those things. He leads soldiers in the battle, and he loves it. He pilots a starship. He's always looking for the fight. He's much more of a soldier than he is a Jedi, and it's like that's the fact that none of the Jedi counts are caught down. I was like, hey, you know, we're supposed to not be eager for a fight, and he engaged in aggressive negotiations on a regular basis. And he's a chosen one, so let's maybe pull him back and talk about that. Nope, he's too good. He's too good at it. We got to win the war, so let's gonna let him just keep doing his own thing. And he even like force breaks to do by using the, like, he can't remember what the scene it is, but like he needs someone to talk, and so he like breaks into his head using the Force, and they never bring it up again. It's like that was a dark side move, and they just ignored it because they wanted to win. You know, they really had too much, like again, the Hebrews and Jedi, they were too arrogant in their own teaching ability to control their own people. And that's why I think Luke was right in episode 8, the Jedi needed to end. I think he's right.
Yeah, and you know, they really kind of touch on that towards the end of the show, where you know, there are warning signs where it's like, you know, what we're doing isn't right, and you have to agree with them. And I think it's Barriss is the one that bombs the Jedi Temple.
Yeah, that's a great episode.
Like Ahsoka turns away after that.
Mm-hmm.
Asajj Ventress mentions that the Jedi have fallen. Dooku mentions it. Maul mentions it. Like there are all these like repeated hints of just like, you know, like everyone else can see what's going on, and even like the random street rats that Ahsoka meets are just like, you know, the Jedi aren't all super great all the time and super awesome. And Ahsoka at this point kind of knows, but for her it's personal, and I guess for them it is too. But they offer more of like a every man of the Republic kind of view of the Jedi.
No, Scott Owen's right. I would love to see us like there's definitely a cabbie out there who sees it all.
There's a cabbie in
Like
the show. There's the episode where Fives is like going insane and he
mhm.
like goes undercover. And then he like gets in a cab and there's a cabbie and the cabbie's just like ranting and raving like, oh, I've heard all these conspiracy theories and all this.
uh, there's so many good episodes. Did you watch? I assume you see them at least once. The Pong Krell episodes with the
Yeah,
oh
those
my
are
god,
interesting. Like
this is so good.
especially for a kid show, those are really dark.
Yeah,
Um,
it's we watched them in preparation for this podcast, and it's like I was blown away. I'm like the storytelling and how like when there's the scene where the fire of the old man and Rex tackles that one clone, rip his helmet off, and I'm just like they're literally killing their brothers. You know, they even said the brothers. You know, they're all clones, and the emotional impact of that scene. It's hard not to get a little like misty eyed. It's so well done. I'm like, I watched this when I was 9 or something or 12.
yeah, so that's an interesting series of episodes. And you did like I know we mentioned it's a kid show, but I feel like it's also a show that kind of grew up with its audience. Like you start
Mhm.
season 1, it starts off kind of lighthearted, and as it goes along, it becomes kind of darker as it goes along. It doesn't start off kind of dark and stay dark throughout. It does
Yeah.
kind of age with its audience to a degree.
Mhm.
Um, especially since season 6 and 7 came so much later than the first 5, so
Yeah.
they tackle darker
Mhm.
topics. But yeah, the Pong Krell episodes, like they show like the clones start to doubt the Jedi, the chain of command is questioned,
Mhm.
um, and if you think about what Tarkin was saying about like um, doing what it takes to win a battle, that's kind of what General Krell is doing. He's like he doesn't see the clone. He see, like I said earlier, he sees them as droids. He
Mhm.
to him
CT seven
they're
five
not
seven
people.
five or something. You know, he
Yeah,
won't even use their names. He uses their numbers.
yeah. So for him, they might as well be droids, and he's just
Mm-hmm.
trying to win a battle. And like, yeah, you really get a sense of just like the clones starting to like kind of question like,
Mm-hmm.
should we really follow all the orders? And
Yeah.
like they do anyway. And like the kind of like this some of the episodes like, oh well, he was evil, and that's why bad things happened.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
No, did you ever play the Force Awakens video games?
Force Awakens.
Not Force
Um,
Awakens, Force Unleashed.
yeah, yeah, the Force
Force
Unleashed I
Awakens
played.
was a movie. Oh, I when Force Awakens came out, I kept calling it Force Unleashed, and now I have it backwards. Ugh, stupid brain. No, Force Unleashed. Rom Coda, the Jedi who refused to work with the clones and had his own Melissa Force. Would have loved to see him in the Clone Wars. Like I think that's the only thing the Clone Wars didn't bring in that I would have loved to see. You know, like this is a guy who won't use the clones because he doesn't trust them, and he was right. You know, I would have loved to see that kind of dynamic. Like, if he been Anakin who loves the clones and trusts the clones as his life, to Rom who doesn't trust them at all, like that dynamic would have been amazing.
Yeah, there's that. And the other thing that's kind of like just kind of glossed over almost by everyone is like, wait, you're telling me there's no volunteers to fight for the Republic? Like that at no
Wow,
point is
that's a good
there
point.
ever like at no point is there ever any mention of just like, like
Civilian volunteers.
like civilian volunteers like I know that like obviously the clone troop is their own thing, but you're telling me that there wasn't like some
Yeah.
volunteers who are like, yeah, like I'll sign up. Like you see the Senate guards, but like
Mhm.
they're kind of just set dressing for certain episodes, and they might as well be clones in blue armor. Like,
Yeah, and the only
you know,
time you see people fight who want clones are when they go to someone's home planet and they're defending their own planet. They never
yeah,
leave
like
their own planet.
the freedom fighters, like on
Mhm.
Ryloth and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You'll see them.
I think even the thing about it too, like in the Old Republic, they had they weren't clones; they were Old Republic troopers who volunteered. You know, so like
Yeah,
that, they're really supposed to how many people hate the Republic. They're not no one. I wonder if there's no one volunteered, they wouldn't accept volunteers. You know, and like what's one? Now I got me.
I
I'm gonna look that
wonder.
up.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because if you have a volunteer force, then Order 66 kind of becomes less effective, right?
Yeah,
So that's an interesting theory that Palpatine may have orchestrated. Like, no, our army is going to be only clones, and you
and
could sell it. Yeah, no, you
yeah,
can
you
see
can
him
easily
selling it as
sell
like,
that.
I'm not willing to sacrifice our people. We have these these soldiers who are bred for this, and we're going to use them so that they can protect
He's up
you
there
and you don't have
like,
to fight.
I'm not willing to sacrifice my voters. I mean, my citizens or my citizens. Oh, that's wow.
Yeah,
That's too much to think about now.
I've never thought about that before, and I'm
That
kind of
is,
gonna I'm gonna have to reflect on that later
I'm gonna
because
have to. That is something to look into on the Clone Wars now. It's like, what was the civilian population situation like on that? That's huh. Because they went to this Coruscant, like they do a weird thing when they only show like Coruscant is a Republic war, everyone else is on the Friends, Outer Rim. I think there's Naboo, there's Alderaan, there are all other citizens, other places where there's just peaceful people living their life, not on not on the Friends where there's war, and not on a Capitol building. Like they're just peaceful planets, and they never even bring up like no one in Naboo volunteers for the Republic army. They volunteer for the local army, but they never volunteer. Huh?
yeah, they all have like their own internal like defense force, but again, that's not really the same thing because they're
No.
only fighting when things come to them, and that's
Yeah.
it's kind of like police at that point. It's not really soldiers. There's kind of a
Yeah.
distinction there.
I mean, it was the thing like they had to form a galactic army of the Republic because there wasn't one beforehand. But once if they had a conflict, you think at least someone would have been like, "Hey, there's a conflict going on. There's a fight. I want to join the fight." And there's no mechanism for them to even like get involved.
But
Palpatine,
yeah,
clever dude. You watch some of these things, like when what happens in the end, and like walking it backwards, like that's part of the plan. That's part of the plan. There's so much there that is like backtracked in post production, that makes it so interesting.
yeah. Like in the earlier seasons, like the season 1 through 5, there's the occasional hint at like him kind of getting his way, but in season 6 and 7, it really kind of like really shows. It's like the banking clan collapses and he takes over that. Um, he like desperately tries to cover up the secret of the clone army. Um, I'm trying to think about a couple. There's a couple other things that happen early in the show as well, where like he forces a key vote and like gets his way on it. But yeah, you can just kind of see things like constantly slipping towards him. And in season 6 and 7, he really gets like the big pieces because early on it's little ones like letting the war continue. Yeah, things like that.
There's a yeah, you remember the episode with the Zillow Beast, that giant ancient monster they found on Rylos or something?
Yeah. I don't think it's Ryloth, but
Well,
yeah,
not
I
Rylos,
know
it's one of
I
the
know the one
planets.
you're talking about.
He took it back for cloning, and they never bring it up again. And I'm still waiting for something post new Star Wars to bring it up. Like I'm still waiting for something to be like, oh, that's mini Zillow Beast or something. Because they just did that and they left it so ambiguous in the ending, and it's like, Palpatine is in every single trilogy. It's like at one point I want to see a Zillow Beast reference or something. Because I think that was a very good episode, very exciting episode as a kid. An ancient monster that can like withstand lightsabers. Like I want to see that. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I think that's the one. That might be the one time where Palpatine kind of gets ahead of himself. Like he's trying to play it off as like, oh, like think about what we could do for the Republic, and that he's thinking about like what he could do for the Empire. Clearly, there's no surprise there. But I think even it gets into his head a little bit of like this is like a really good opportunity, and of course everything goes to shit and like it kind of backfires on him. But I think that's maybe the one time where you can see Palpatine being a little bit greedy, because for the rest of it, he really is very patient. He plays it like this is like a 20-year long thing. Like if you go from like him being elected to senator on Naboo to becoming the emperor, it's like this is like a decades. At that one moment with the Zillow Beast is the one time where he kind of just like throws caution in the wind. He's just like, no, we need to study this thing now. I kind of want this stuff right away.
Yeah, that's the one time he gets greedy. It is the one time he gets greedy. Let's talk about Maul. What was your opinion of them bringing Maul back to life after? You can't see, but I have quotation marks up, killing him in episode 1.
Yeah, there's this thing in Star Wars where no one's ever really gone, but Maul does, especially the way they brought him back. It's not like he kind of came back. It was like you had Asajj Ventress get what's his name, Savage.
Yeah,
and then Savage goes and
great
finds
character.
Yeah, and then Savage goes and finds Maul. So it's kind of like a natural, believable progression as to how we get there. It's not like Obi-Wan goes to some planet. It's like surprise, like Maul's alive. And the state he starts in, he's not like, still like with it. He's kind of gone insane.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
they kind of have to bring him back. So I did like it's a little tacky to do like, this character was actually not dead the whole time.
yeah.
But
I
they
think
do
they did a good
treat the
job.
trope really well. Yeah, it's about as well executed version
Yeah.
of that trope as you could get, I think.
My view of Maul is so all over the place. Because on one hand, I love that he brought him back because I think he's amazing in the Clone Wars. Him taking over Mandalore, Palpatine sort of and killing Savage and bringing him back into the fold. His battle with Ahsoka, his hunting of Obi-Wan Kenobi, fantastic. Then they put him in Rebels, and he's just a non-entity so much of the time. He's just there for like clicks from little kids, like it's Maul. I gotta watch this one. And then they kill him off. They have him fight Ben Kenobi, which is kind of cool. But they did that at the time, not knowing they were going to be making an Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show. And now you've killed off Maul in a cartoon in a very lame fight. And it's like, if you didn't do that, if you just left him out of Rebels completely, you could have had Maul in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show played by Ray Park with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. And you could have finished that story off properly. But Rebels, it's the only time I think Dave Filoni made a mistake is in killing Maul off in Rebels. That was the only mistake I think he's ever made. And I just noticed that we talked about Star Wars and Avatar, and he was involved in both of those.
There you go.
God,
there you go. But those shows you like, there's at least there's someone that you can trust.
Dave Filoni, oh man, he is fantastic. Clone Wars, Mandalorian, Avatar, Clone Wars, Mandalorian. The dude knows how to make good Star Wars things. It's good anything.
Yeah, and Jon Favreau is actually the voice of Pre Vizsla.
Oh, don't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of a cameo, but if you go back and listen to it, you can tell right away. But yeah, so he voices Pre Vizsla. So he's in this a little bit too. And they know what they're doing because they didn't just I watched some featurette somewhere, like some behind the scenes thing, and I think it was for The Mandalorian, and they were talking about how they didn't just want to kind of do what had already been done and write Star Wars stories from scratch. They kind of took inspiration from things Lucas took inspiration from. So they went back and watched like a bunch of old like pulpy westerns, pulpy adventure movies, some samurai movies, and kind of took those and said, how can we do this in the Star Wars universe? And I think that because they did it that way, it really kind of captured more of George Lucas's spirit.
Yeah. I don't know if I can't remember why I saw this act. I keep bringing it up, but Jon Favreau, when he wanted to do the Baby Yoda story, one of George Lucas's rules for anyone who was getting involved in Star Wars was no Yoda stuff. No exploring Yoda's backstory, no exploring Yoda's home planet. He wanted Yoda's backstory to be as ambiguous as possible. And so when they made The Mandalorian, he went and talked to George Lucas first, like, hey, I want to do a Baby Yoda type plot line. Are you okay with that? And George was like, yeah, go ahead. That sounds fun.
And so and it's funny that like even though George said like we don't want to explore his background, like we're gonna do the Baby Yoda, but even with Grogu, like you learn his name, then that's it. Like you still don't know what planet they're from. You still know anything about their civilization. Like the only thing that you know is that they age slowly, which you already knew because Yoda was 900 years old.
Yeah,
so there's really nothing new there. And
I want to know. So, like, there's nothing. No, if you need to go like the Old Republic, and you go into deep in the Old Republic lore, there's nothing. They have done a great job of hiding. Is it a Yoda type species character on the Old Republic Council?
Yeah, I think.
But you don't know anything about his home.
Yeah, and like Yaddle, I think it's Yaddle or something like that. But it's the same thing. It's just kind of like basically Yoda, but not Yoda. It's like Yoda with a different name in Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you still don't know anything. No home planet, no nothing.
Yeah, they did it. The fact that Star Wars, like the fact that everyone in that Mos Eisley scene, Mos Eisley Cantina scene, episode 4 has a whole wiki page for every character in the entire scene, and we know nothing about Yoda's whole backstory or home world. Is pretty impressive considering how much lore there is in Star Wars. Like,
yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Like,
is there anything else that has more lore? Like, I mean, like Lord of the Rings doesn't have as much lore as Star Wars has.
Maybe 40K. Like
maybe
Warhammer 40K.
so maybe 40K and maybe actual history. I think that's the only thing that can rival it. Actual history. I think I know more about Star Wars history than I know about real history, though. Sadly, I mean that's the.
Well, to be fair, Star Wars history is a lot more fantastical than, you know.
And I don't feel guilty when I read it. When I read about American history, I feel guilty. You read Scott Owen's books, you're like, God, we suck.
Yeah, at least in Star Wars, it's like, oh, well, at least I was involved in that. So, but yeah, I do feel that.
That's good. Like, there are people and who teach at colleges who are token scholars. The scholars of all tokens works and like historians. There's no one for Star Wars doing that, which is weird considering how popular Star Wars is. It's modern day mythology for so many people. You'd think to be like a Star Wars scholar by now, but it's so weird. Star Wars isn't like. It's really, I don't know why, but Lord of the Rings has reached the level of like respectability that Star Wars has not reached yet. Even though Star Wars is more popular than Lord of the Rings, I think.
I think there's two things for that. One is it's literature, not movies, primarily, and two, it's older. So I think those two things work.
Do you think think by the time you see, if you think 30 to 40 years from now, some guy's gonna be on news that's gonna say Professor of Star Wars History? I would not be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see that.
I don't know if it would be history, but I mean, there's like English students and PhDs who have done theses on like I think the Twilight books was one. So I'm sure there's people who have done stuff on Star Wars, and even though there's probably not a lot of like well known like Star Wars, I'm sure there are people who have like kind of like Scott was when you had Scott on, he mentioned some guy who got really excited about like the taxation of trade routes and what that means in like Star Wars. I'm sure there's people who have like done deep dives on like the ethics and philosophy of like the Jedi, the Sith.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's a guy on YouTube. The guy on YouTube who's done a series dissecting the economics of the galactic Civil War in Star Wars. He's very Austrian too, and so it's very fun to watch.
The economics of like, there's not a lot of economics in this show, but the economics that are there, like, are very Austrian if you think about it, because it's always like, oh, we need to take out a loan to have more clones so we can win the war, and like the objection isn't like, oh well, this will raise interest rates and we'll need to like raise taxes, and it's like, oh, we're gonna go into debt and everything's gonna collapse, which is like what the Austrians basically predict if like you take money on credit. So it's kind of interesting that things are done that way.
Yeah, the only I was gonna say, a lot of sci-fis when it gets to economics, like Star Trek economics are all over the place. It's like
make any sense.
No, like Next Generation, it's just like we don't have currency anymore. And DS9 is like, how that's a bar that runs off of Latinum. These people do they pay the Federation because they don't have money, but these people are buying hollow sweets and food. So it's like there's gotta have some kind of like. I would love the next Star Trek show to explain the economics of Star Trek because I'm so intrigued by it, but there's no information out there.
I truly have no idea how Quark makes any money.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that Quark makes money.
I'm glad too. But you watch like Steve O'Brien and Messiah are constantly in the Hollow Street and they cost money. Like the only thing I could think of is that they have a Starfleet officers have a stipend when they're living on a base that's not Federation base. Like that's gotta be the only thing that makes sense.
It's got to be something like that. Like
I guess that means the Federation has taxes.
Yeah, but how? Like, I don't want to get into the economics of Star Trek, but I mean, like, there's pseudo post scarcity, so I'm not even like. There's so many. Nothing makes sense. Star Trek and economics.
That was the thing. Gene Roddenberry was like, socialism is a utopian, and he made the original. Then he's like, hey, it's not a utopian because it sucks. Because he was writing it like, doing everyone thought socialism was gonna work. Then he figured out it's not gonna work, and so he had to like change everything up in Next Generation and DS9, and was like, well, I have to find a way to keep the lore accurate, but also comport to reality now. And so it's really a weird mix of it. Enough about Star Trek. I'm gonna try to do a month of those and a month of Star Trek stuff in a few months. But
well, that'd be exciting. Like, I'm a big fan of TNG and DS9. So
see, for me, I gotta ask you now. Favorite Star Trek show? Like, if you had to rank them, what do you?
For me personally, in
Mhm.
terms of the way I like them. I put DS9 1 and TNG 2. I
Yeah,
haven't seen
DS9 on top.
yeah, I haven't seen any Voyager really or
Mhm.
Enterprise, but I've seen the original series. The original series is probably about as good as TNG.
Mhm. No, yeah,
Um,
I've said it before. My Twitter handle for the last couple of days has been Star Trek DS9 appreciation account.
yeah,
Like DS9 is the best.
I will say that on average, TNG has better episodes, but the
Mhm.
peaks for DS9 are much higher than
Yeah.
anything TNG.
Once they have the war episode start, like around season 5 onward, you're just like, this is beautiful. Oh, but
Yeah,
back to Star Wars.
yeah. So speaking of war, um, did you know that Anakin commits a war crime in the Clone Wars?
I'm not shocked, but I don't know what I'm not surprised, but I'm not so when. What scene are you referring
So
to?
it's actually in season 1, um,
The kiddie seasons.
but it's like y'all, everyone kind of bats an eye at it because like, oh, well, it's just stupid droids, so who cares? But it's when they're trying to break the blockade on Ryloth, and he like pretends to surrender and then crashes his ship into the separatist ship. That's a war crime. Like pretending to surrender, like that's straight up a war crime on Earth. Like if you do that
That's
on
not
Earth, that's Geneva Convention stuff.
that's not wow. I guess is it hard? Does that mean Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars movie also committed a war crime? Because he pretended to surrender that stall him to Anakin and Ahsoka goes down the fields in a way though. Like
Um,
but
hmm.
he did pretend to surrender, had to like buy time. I guess that
I guess you could claim that was like negotiations,
mm,
maybe. I think that maybe you could kind of like you could maybe get away with the defense of like he was actually surrendering and then like circumstances changed and
mm.
then he didn't surrender. But like
Well good.
in this one,
Obi-Wan's
it was
still
like
clean.
from
Good.
yeah. So it's like from the outset, like they were like basically we're gonna pretend to surrender and then not surrender.
Couldn't war crimes. Ugh. Anakin. Side murdering, warmongering, war criminal.
Yeah, but again, it's like oh, it's droids and they were starving people, so who cares?
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of those things where it's like if you know that that's a war crime, it's like whoa, what are the Jedi doing?
Being arrogant as always. Um, let's talk about Satine for a little bit and the pacifism of her character. When I was
Yeah,
growing up watching these, I hated her because I was such a neocon. I absolutely hated her character. I'm like, look at this weakling. Doesn't want to get her hands dirty and fight a war when people are dying. And I watch it now. I'm like, no, she's right. She's right. Obi-Wan was wrong.
yeah,
Like
and
it's
I think that that's a character written for adults. I don't think that
Mhm.
that's a character written for children.
Yeah.
Um, and like for several reasons, but um, I think like Prey Vizsla and the Death Watch and Bo-Katan, those are kids characters, and like I get it, and like even as an adult, I still think they're cool.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a kid and you watch Star Wars, war is in the title.
Yeah.
It's not Star Peace, right? So
Mhm.
um, so like as a kid, it's kind of like disappointing where you're like, oh, there's no fighting, like. But as an adult, you're like you were saying, like you kind of get the idea of pacifism. And there's
Mhm.
another episode earlier on where they crash land on some planet, and there's like the natives are pacifists, and they don't even
Mhm.
want to defend themselves against the separatists.
Mhm.
And then eventually, like they come around to the side of like, okay, violence is okay only in self-defense, which I guess
Mhm.
is kind of the Jedi view. And I
Mhm.
guess that's kind of the same view that Satine has. If she's attacked, she'll defend herself. But
Mhm.
um, they're very hard line on like absolutely no violence. And like Satine doesn't even use a regular blaster. She's got like a stun gun
Mhm.
basically. Whereas the Jedi
Yeah.
are kind of like look, if I need to kill 30 people to like to get out of this, then like I'm
Mhm.
gonna do it.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, if in the Old Republic they don't use droids, and the Empire was in trilogy they don't use droids. If they didn't use droids and the Confederacy used volunteer soldiers, would the Jedi still be mowing people down? Or you think they have a very different accent? Like these are people we can't just start mowing down. Volunteer soldiers from the homeworld. We have to actually
I think then there would
negotiate
have
more.
been like a bigger drive to be like, okay, yeah, actually we're peacekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's like I think it being droids kind of like there's like certain rules when you're writing fiction as to like how close you can get to a human being without the audience really
Mm-hmm.
caring. And like,
Yeah.
there's like Nazis are like they're humans, but they're really not. So it's okay if like
Mm-hmm.
you murder them in droves. Zombies is the same thing.
Mm.
Um, Clones kind of borders on that line. Like once you know their names, they become
Yeah.
people, but if you don't know their names, then they're not. And droids are also on that list. So I think making them droids is kind of just like,
I think it was a smart creative decision. But if I wanted to gotta go lore reasons for it, it's smart of Palpatine to go with the droids. Because they can generate hatred for the droids as Jedi and not feel guilty for killing them, but also play into their tendency to become violent and become Xenos by giving them enemies they can kill in droves without feeling guilty.
yeah, I
So,
think that that's like that's a very clever aspect. And um, yeah, I was gonna say something about like using the droids as compared to clones, but I kind of lost my train of thought there.
yeah. Okay. I got a few more questions for you. Then we gotta wrap it up. Sadly, I got of course, these questions probably go for a lot longer because that's how it always goes. I say I'm gonna wrap it up. I ask one question, and here I am an hour later, still talking about things.
Okay, yeah. So I'll let you go ahead.
Favorite arc, because they had a bunch of like that's one thing that's great about Clone Wars. And there are very few standalone episodes. There was a lot of arcs like an anime. So favorite arc.
Um, hmm.
It's tough because it's all good
I'm
ones.
debating. I'm debating between a couple. I would probably say the Mandalore arc would probably be my
Mm,
favorite because it's sprinkled throughout the most in the show. Like
mm,
the other arcs are kind of like 4 or 5 episodes in a row, but
mm,
Mandalore is kind of sprinkled here and there. And it covers everything from like the burden of leadership to corruption, internal
mm,
politics. So I really like the Mandalore arc, and then I think
mm,
like a good one for just like 4 or 5 set episodes would be the Umbara arc with General Crow. I think that
mm,
is a fantastic addition. Like if you just have that as like a movie, then
mm.
like that's excellent.
I think I'm at a tie between the Ponquel arc because it's so amazing, and the Clovis arc when Padme's ex boyfriend shows up from the
Yeah,
Separatists, and Anakin just loses it on him. And Obi-Wan, you kind of see that scene when Obi-Wan's talking to Anakin. Obi-Wan kind of knows Anakin and Padme have something going on. And even like they later confirmed it. That was a later scene in episode 3. Obi-Wan says he knew the whole time, and it's like Obi-Wan knows, and he's too good. He's like that's the thing about Obi-Wan's character. If he remained a teacher and kind of kept an arm's length from Anakin, I think it would have been better off. But because he was a brother to Anakin, he let a lot of things slide that really helped push him to the dark side.
yeah,
It's a
and
great episode.
yeah, those Clovis episodes really show Anakin being angry. Like
Just
there's only
tossing
one
the
other
lightsaber
time.
aside and just punching it in the face with a robot arm.
Yeah, I think the only other time in the show he gets angry is in the Slaver episodes. That's it.
Mm-hmm. He's Anakin's. I love it. And Anakin, like episode, those Clone Wars episodes, man, they did such a good job. The Jon Favreau did such a phenomenal job on this Clone Wars. Okay, next question. Favorite Jedi in the Clone Wars?
Plo Koon.
Nice. That's a good
Plo
pick.
Koon.
That's a good
There's
pick.
lots of good ones.
Mm-hmm.
But Plo Koon just like exudes competence. Like all
Mm-hmm.
the other Jedi, they're kind of like at some point, they kind of like will make some kind of silly jokes and stuff. But Plo Koon is always kind of like he does
Professional.
throw the occasional joke, but it's never like to lighten the mood. It's never like during combat or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always like super wise, super competent, like
And he
knows
cares for
exactly
the
how to get everything
clones.
done. Yeah, and
That
that as
scene
well.
where it's like, "Where's clone store? We don't matter." It's like you do to me. Like you're like, Plo Koon is the best.
Yeah, so I would pick Plo Koon would be my guy.
He's my second pick. I'm going Kit Fisto. Like I absolutely love
Yeah,
Kit
Kit Fisto's
Fisto.
good too.
I'm a green lightsaber guy, and I love Kit Fisto. And his arc was his former Padawan when they take on Grievous. Is that one episode is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's
Grievous is a scary
actually
villain. It's
yeah. There's Grievous, a scary villain, and then the Padawan is like, well, I guess he's a knight. He was a
mm-hmm.
Padawan.
Yeah,
That's another one where like you can see the order kind of slipping because like he kind of just became a knight, and all he wants to do is like be a warrior, and they
and
kind of
prove
like lose
himself.
sight of the
And he's
the
arrogant.
Yeah.
He's very arrogant, and his arrogance gets him killed. You know, it's a great episode, I think.
Yeah.
Next question. I forgot what it was. So I'm actually I got a new question. Of all the Jedi you see die in the Clone Wars in Episode 3, which death was the hardest to watch in your opinion? For me, it's Katie Amundi on Magneto, because he charges forward and he turns around, the clones all stop to shoot him, and he's so hurt and he's like so shocked that his death is so sudden. You know, it's a very sad scene.
Yeah, I think it would be a tie between that or Ayla Sakura on Felucia. It would definitely be one of those two, because the other ones are a lot more impersonal. Like Plo Koon is just kind of shot down in a fighter plane.
Yeah, that one
and you don't really
sucked. I
see
hated
it.
that one. I hated
Yeah,
that
so it
one.
doesn't have the same emotional impact. There's where Kiadi
Mhm.
Mooney, like you can see kind of the shock on his face. And same thing with Ayla, but the thing with Ayla is just like she's totally not ready for it.
Mhm.
Like I don't even think she has a chance to really do anything. It's just kind
Nope.
of she's shot right away. And like Kiadi Mooney has time to try to defend himself, but he
Mhm.
just kind of gets overwhelmed.
The Battlefront 2 made the Alias Akira scene even harder to watch, because they I don't know if you played Battlefront 2 campaign, but
Which
it's
one? The
on
one from 2005?
2005. Yeah, the good one.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yes.
mean,
I played that game. I still play that game.
it's a great game. It is. It has the best Starfleet Starship fighter pilot aspects.
Yeah,
Those two ships, and it's amazing.
I'm much more of a space battles starfighter guy than a Jedi guy. So that's
Have you played Squadrons at all yet?
not Squadrons. But I've when like back in the day I used to play like Rogue Squadron on like the
Mm.
GameCube and stuff. I had like X-Wing and TIE Fighter on the PC when I was younger. So yeah.
I picked up Squadrons recently, and I have a VR headset, and so I've been playing that with my it was so much fun that I went out and spent my next when I got paid again. I bought a what's it called, a flight simulator stick kind of thing, and so I've been playing that with the VR headset and the stick, and actually like trying to get immersive. Even when it's good, it's not as good as Battlefront 2. It's just like they really nailed that game. But no, in the campaign for it, if you remember, it's all narrated by the guy who played Zango Fett, which is awesome. I can't pronounce his name. I can't remember what his name is.
Somewhere
But
Marison.
yes, Tetsu. Yeah. And he says that Ayla Akira, we never look her in the eye. You know, when he did it, because you
Yeah.
feel like it makes that like you watch that scene and you play the game and you watch it again, you're just like, but you liked her, you cared for her, and you just murdered her like it was nothing. It's and the fact that her body like twitches, you know, once he's on the ground, they're still shooting and her body's twitching. You're like, that's a brutal one.
Yeah, that one's pretty brutal.
Yeah. Now the Plo Koon one, because he died in a ship, it's all people online saying he's still alive, and it's like I wish he was, but I don't think he is.
No, they're not gonna bring Plo Koon back.
Well, did you see the Mandalorian people when they were doing the Luke scene? They created fake concept art and for the scene, and everyone's gonna be Luke. They put Plo Koon in the scene. So there's online concept of Plo Koon coming through the ship and taking on the super battle droids type deals. And so if it was leaked, it'd be leaked that Plo Koon was doing, not Luke. And so there's some really cool new Plo Koon images on the internet now.
That's kind of cool, but it's best just to let Plo Koon be.
Yeah.
I don't need him to come back.
Yep. The final question is: if there's any Jedi or any character in the Clone Wars, and you could see make a new appearance in the Mandalorian and the new Disney Star Wars shows, what character would you want to see coming from the Clone Wars to the new show?
Ooh, probably one of the bounty hunters. I'm not sure which one.
Cad Bane.
I would probably say Hondo Anaka, because
that was my pick.
Because
my pick too.
Bane is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get me wrong, and like it depends what direction. I think Hondo is like more entertaining, And like there's a lot more stuff you can do with Hondo, whereas Cad Bane you're kind of like locked in with like super ultra serious bounty hunter all the time. Whereas
And they have
Hondo,
Boba Fett and they have Mando. You already have a bunch of
yeah, you already
hunters.
have that role. You don't need another guy. And like
Yeah.
the only way that would be appropriate is if he's even more hardcore and he's kind of like in opposition to them.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
think
like, I could
Hondo,
see that happening. It'd be kind of cool. But
yeah, but I think Hondo gives you more flexibility where like, you know, he can start off as a friend and then become an enemy. Like he is in the show too. Like, you know, at different points throughout the show, he's a friend, he's an enemy, he's kind of neutral.
yeah,
Like
he's
he
in
jumps around. He can play whatever you need him to play.
he's in Star Wars Rebels, and he's great in that. So, and you know, he's still alive in the sequel trilogy because at Disney and Orlando, Disney World, Star Wars Land, they got Galaxy's Edge. That was really cool. Disney did. They made that canon. Like they put Galaxy's Edge Adventures on the canon map. And so if you see a character there, so there's a ride, a Millennium Falcon ride, and they have an animatronic of Hondo hiring the Millennium Falcon for a job. And so because that's the canon event, and that you know he's still alive by the time of the sequel trilogy. So they could easily just say he's not dead and they bring him in.
Yeah, no. So I would lean towards Hondo over Cad Bane.
Hondo's that was a great character. That was when I was young and first watching the show, because the characters had spikes on, like they had like spiky faces, gave me nightmares, and I wasn't allowed to watch the show anymore. I was like super young. I had one nightmare, and I don't think it was. I think it was more like Freddy Krueger nightmare than it was actually Hondo. But my parents is associated with Star Wars, and no more Clone Wars for you.
It's just kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. It was funny now, but for going for like a year of not being able to watch Clone Wars, it sucked. It's like,
yeah, I mean, you catch up pretty quick.
I caught up now, yeah. Which is, there's so many weird things. Like they'd be like, you could watch Clone Wars, but you can't watch Power and Beyond. You could watch Digimon, but you can't watch Power Rangers. I'm like, what? This is all over the place. And just apparently, I asked them about it recently. They said, you watch too many shows and bought too many. We watched too many shows and asked for too many toys as a kid, so we can't really watch too many because you kept asking for more things. I'm like, that's good parenting. That's actually a good reason.
Yeah, that's a
respect.
That's a good rule to have. But yeah, when I was a kid, I was a big like how old would I have been? I would have been when these come out 2008, so I would have been 16. I would have been in high school. So yeah, I still watch this. Like I was still a big Star Wars fan, still am.
Yeah.
Though I haven't played anything Star Wars recently apart from Battlefront 2, which is like 16 years old at this point.
If you're looking for a new Star Wars game, Fallen Order is absolutely incredible.
That's
yeah,
it's
good.
Yeah, I've not gonna run. I don't own a console yet. I'm saving up to get a new computer. So if it's on PC, I might get it for PC.
It is. That's where I have. That's where I have it at. It's good. Well, plug your stuff and we can get out of here.
Okay. I don't have much to plug. If you enjoy Twitter shenanigans, then you can follow me on Twitter at Cheeseburglar, which is CHEEZBURG13R. I spelled it wrong, but yeah. So CHEEZBURG13R.
I love that on my podcast. I can have people. I'm like, this is Scott Horn, head of the Libertarian Institute and head editor of antiwar.com. And next we got, here is the Cheeseburglar.
Yeah, I do share a lot of Scott's views, and like I'm kind of
based. That's the word, based.
Yeah, I'm still kind of floating out like kind of where I am. If I could recommend, I would definitely recommend following Scott Horton. But yeah, I definitely fall kind of more on that side of the political spectrum for sure. So
well, so it's called the Libertarian Book Club, but really I think everyone I've had on has been an ANCAP. I think I've had one guy who was an ANCAP, and so
I don't know if I'd call myself that, but I don't get angry when people call me that, so I just let it slide.
Let slide. That's a good attitude to have. Well, this has been the Libertarian Book Club / TV show club. So that's also video game apparently because I'm missing Star Wars. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I have to say it. I'm sorry. Come back again soon because I think this weekend I'm having on Kangaroo Anarchist. I think is his name. We're going to talk about the necessity of violence. And the next episode we're going to have on is the Techno Agorist. We're talking about pacifism in Star Wars.
Yeah,
And so it's going to be a
those will
lot
be
of fun.
good. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, you have a good night. May the force be with you.